Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the District Needs and Budget Committee meeting of CB11. The September meeting of CB11's District Needs and Budget Committee. My name is Joss Kelly and I am the chair of this committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:38 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Angel Muscane, the staff liaison to our committee. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. That chat should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record when recognized. Please keep your questions and comments brief and on topics of discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. We will now take attendance by roll call. Committee members, please answer present when your name is called.
Stephanie Arroyo. Kenneth Crouch,
Present.
Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Judith Cabral was excused, David Giordano,
Present.
Sage Mason,
Present.
Dawn Sanders. Derek Stampone.
Present.
Thank you, we have none.
All right, thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there is no objection, we'll adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the last meeting, I guess, we do not have. But they're the minutes of our last meeting were distributed to committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we'll adopt the minutes of that meeting. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand to be recognized. The minutes of tonight's meeting are being taken by myself. We'll now move into our announcements. See, the first announcement is about our public hearings to be held at our September 24th full board meeting. On September 24th, 2024, CB11 will hold public hearings on first the statement of district needs and budget request fiscal year 2026, which is what we will be discussing here. And the second item is the land use application 240385 MMM 240386 ZMM 240378 HAM 240388 ZRM related to the proposed beacon mixed use development project. Any other announcements or questions about the announcements? Okay. Now we'll move on into our presentations and discussions. Our first is a committee discussion on the goals for 2024-2025 meeting session. And just, I think anyone can feel free to raise their hand. Just to give a little bit of context, obviously this is my first time chairing this committee meeting, so I am learning how to chair this meeting. But we will move forward in this process together. I think we have a good group here in our committee, and I'm confident that we're going to execute this process in the best possible way and hope to, address the needs and concerns of our community as best as we can. I think my personal goal really is just to get it done well, really. So the budget requests, the statement of district needs, and I think in my conversation with Angel, we're really the fail safe, I think. So regardless of, what happens, we are the end all be all of this process. So we are working obviously hand in hand with all the other committees of our board. But if there's any gaps, we will be the ones to fill it. And I just wanted to note that previously in the past, I think a lot of weight has been put onto the staff of the community board, and my primary goal also is to reduce that as much as possible and take the brunt of this work within our committee and our board members here. Anything you want to add, Angel?
No, I thought that was great, in terms of goals, I just, I'm hoping that the committee in this cycle, in this meeting session can, get us back on track in terms of like what we were originally intending, to do with this committee as it relates to this, the district needs process and the budget request process. To really be kind of like the go-to committee, for this process to keep the rest of the board organized. It's a process that members find absolutely confusing when they're first appointed, and then still a bit overwhelming as they're, you know, as they become more veteran members. I don't know that it necessarily has to be as overwhelming, but I think it's incumbent upon us with this committee to try to help the rest of the board along in understanding how it is that they can contribute to the process, what it is they should be looking for throughout the year that can help inform what the ultimate statement and list of budget requests are. Just the last thing in terms of like a simple way to look at it that I've been advising members for years to think about is as we go through the year here and at the other committees, you know, we're having a minimum of 10 meetings with every committee. We're hearing presentations, we're discussing different topics, we're seeing things in the neighborhood, and that's how we assess needs, right? Something as simple as noticing that lights are always out on this particular street, that's assessing a need. And then we can make a request that, you know, perhaps the lights are always broken there and that's why the lights aren't on. Something as simple to assess as that, you know, up to and including big projects, you know, larger, you know, dream scenario asks, right? Like the renovation of the Esplanade that the Parks Committee's been pushing for years and that we've made a lot of progress on. I think members need to understand that progress does happen. It just takes time. So sometimes in the immediate, it's easy to get discouraged because we think we're asking for something that makes a lot of sense time and again and again and again, and it's not just happening. It doesn't mean that things don't happen, you know, without going into a list of things. There are a number of things that all of us are really enjoying in the neighborhood that resulted from action from a lot of different entities, including the community board. So I like to say that often, so there's a sense of members and it's a motivator for members to engage this process, because like good things can happen. You know, we're about to have a whole brand new park that was a figment of our imagination that we used to fight about at this table, like you're making it up, like really fight about it. And it's gonna happen, you know, thank goodness. And, you know, whether it's, you know, in 5 years or whatever, there's gonna be people out there enjoying it. And that's, you know, hopefully some of us too. So I say that to, you know, try to motivate members to engage this. There is a lot of documentation that the city makes available, and that is definitely overwhelming. I'm not gonna pretend that I read all that stuff, it's impossible, it's 6,000 pages, no one's reading that. But if you learn how to kind of sift through it, and if we can figure out a way to organize our efforts so that member A does this section, member B the other, I think there's ways to you know, utilize the information that's being made available to us in a way that, you know, that we can digest and that we can then turn around to informing our positions. Whether it's to ask for something, to revise something, or to move away from an ask, maybe it's already solved. So yeah, so that I'm hoping that, you know, all those words, I'm hoping that we can start off by revising the work plan, this little colorful, it's not colorful here, but it's colorful online document. That just kind of lays out how we do it, you know, how we can do it and the things that we can commit to. It's a couple of pages, but it isn't too much. There's just a couple of simple tasks. Some of them are for staff, some of them are for y'all, some of them are for the committees, you know. And I think it can help us as we go along through the year, so, it doesn't feel like, oh, we're being asked to do all of these things all at this moment, it's just. It's just not accurate, we can break it up, we try to, at least that part of the exercise, break that part up. And illustrate it in a way that it's a little bit more digestible, so that's the one goal I want for the committee this year.
There you go. Yeah, I think like our best case scenario is building, rebuilding this process that we really already have and making sure that we have a sustainable path forward so that, the work of this committee can, as you're saying, it'll be taking place throughout the year. And it's not like this big push, right when we jump back into the meeting cycle. So I think we can get there and, we have the groundwork laid, and I think with this beautiful team, I think we're gonna, get really far. So does anyone else have any goals?
I would say how we tie veterans sometimes with our committees. Advocacy organizations and get more into the testifying at City Hall when they have the hearings. And I know I kind of talked that, for a while, but I think in this perspective. When I did start this board, process wasn't even that. Now we're at a circle now where we gotta rejuvenate it, right? But the process by which we set up to do this work is so much different, particularly under Angel's leadership as the district manager, along with the chairs, and the process has evolved. Little by little, each chair has evolved and even more. I mean, some of the things we were just crazy, just throwing things out there and vote. Really, right? I mean, but Angel was right, like people that knew what were the needs in the community. But we didn't do the research, as the same way there's so many things out there. We didn't spend as much time getting the support. I think we've also learned over time, particularly in youth for us, how we better navigate through DOE, because there's so many sub-entities and sub-agencies in DOE, and you can go nowhere by going to the wrong one, and nobody's gonna say, hey, well, yeah, So I think we've made those strides, and I think this process is good. I was honestly working with you, Jessica, over the last few years as the committee chair. It was good to see that you leading this forward. I made some changes that can be done on. So again, I think, you get too comfortable in something, sometimes you need to switch so that you get yourself rejuvenated.
Anybody else? Anyone online?
So for me, I'm excited to be a part of this process. I am a new member. So personal goal for me, right, is just to learn more about this process. I work for the Department of Education. I'm an assistant principal at a high school. So even as like an employee of the city, I still know this process is very complex, opaque, perhaps on purpose, right? And so that's one thing for me, is like to learn more. And I wonder if a goal for this group could also be, if we look to community boards and other parts of the city that seem to be more successful and getting what they're asking for, right? Like, what are the things that they're doing that we could replicate? Like going through this document, like seeing things like talk to an elected, or this is the wrong agency, or all of that kind of stuff. Like, how can we better leverage not just what we're asking for, but like the right way to ask for it, right? And the right pressure to apply. Because I think that the city works best when it works for its citizens. And I see a lot of things that I think CB11 could benefit from the city, just like serving the residents here. Not just those dream projects type things, but just like the day-to-day, right? People want to live in a safe, clean city with opportunity. And it seems like there's a lot of that here. If we get more of it done, we'll be better off.
We're on the goals for this year. I'd like to weigh in.
Yeah. Well, hey, everyone, including those online, just came to the 25th precinct council meeting. Hearing a lot, we'll save that for my report full board. But I think goals that keep in mind is more community engagement. That I can't recommend that high enough. We are constantly plugging in through our neighbors. We are, as 50 members strong leaders. And so you should know everyone there. So that little QR code, just pinging that out, getting that, and to show up at our meetings, whether it's virtual or not. But I think just, I think that's why we're going to lead the charge, coming off of, park stores. They've been very reticent to doing that, with NYCHA, but that's something that, because we have the third highest amount in the city, in the district. So for me, it's, with this committee in general, as a board, we have to plug in just more and more. Just really our local businesses and checking in with them. Also attending the events in the community. That's a good thing for all of us to do. There were a handful of people who came to the Boyd Health Fair. There are some events happening. East Harlem Co-ed is happening this Saturday. So tabling opportunities, way for us to connect with so many. Just I'll stop by that, and I'm gonna go to somebody to speak at 1199, which is one of our largest Mitchell Llama developments, which is an affordable co-op here. So these are the ways we connected so many. That's it. I just wanted to come in because I gotta get this guy through dinner and homework. Good to see everyone. You too, Angel. Good to see you. Sage and Don, I see on there, and anyone else, but I wanted to wish you really good luck with this committee. This committee came about, to give you a little, and I mentioned it briefly when I welcome back. When we had our bylaws, and Dave remembers how long ago that was. This is one of our two main standing committees among the executive, land use and budget. I first chaired this committee, and we created a model, and then subsequent that Harley, who's no longer with us, former staff member, helped deepen the model, and we refined. And so it's going to be a little bit of drinking from the fire hose, but that is okay. Angel this is the meat and potatoes of what we do. It's really helpful. I was on a couple of the calls this week with them, and some of the agency responses. I'm sure I could feel the eye roll. But and Susan as well. Her pushback was great. But you're in really great hands with Jess here. So she's just carry on and enjoy, and there's a resource. And you got Dave here who's been doing this a long time too. So, as always, and keep calm and carry on.
Thank you.
Don't forget your towel. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I'll let you get going. We'll see you at full board. Say bye, George. Say bye, everyone.
Nice to see you.
Stop by.
For full transparency, when I first started with the district and the budget process, I didn't know the difference between the expense and the capital expense. But
It's
Budget, anticipatory budgeting, used to have the workshops.
yeah, but to your point, Derek, I can't remember who it was that gave, who we spoke to, but I think it was the Office of Management and Budget. We had a meeting with them, I believe it was last year. About like how, to your point, like how do we get better responses to our requests and,
city plan.
and I think I'd probably have to find that and I can recirculate the notes from that call so that everybody knows what was said, but, asking our council members, like making sure we're approaching the question to the right agency, that we're framing it in a way that is an achievable ask. So there's a number of things that like hopefully we can work to refine.
I know what you also said, even when we think about speaking to other communities.
Yeah.
Are there issues that overlap that we should be advocating as two communities or many communities together? It's easy to divide and conquer, right? So the more that we're all divided, when we do have overlapping issues.
Yeah. And I would be happy to reach out to the, chairs and other members of other community boards, just a note that I
You all
would.
come together, district or the
Borough budget council.
borough budget council. Do those things ever come? I'm sure you'll talk about commonality issues.
Yeah.
But does anybody say, yo, let's do that together?
So kind of, so it's a good kickoff for like a couple of the steps in the process, right? There's the borough budget consultation, the borough level consultations, and then the district level consultation. So the borough consultations are comprised of the district managers for all Manhattan in our case. And what we do is we meet with all the agencies and we pose to them questions from the borough perspective. So in that way, we are like doing it together, right? So if we're, we're asking HPD, like, yeah, so it's like, it's HPD for more affordable housing for seniors, right, or something. It's something that if not all the boards, then many of the boards are, interested in getting, in pushing HPD on, getting clarity as to what HPD may be doing in that regard. And let's like this, so there's 12 of us, so let's say 7 of us are really interested and the other ones aren't quite as much. They'll go along and what we do is we compile a list of questions to submit to the different agencies and we just agree. Like, okay, we're like, I have no opposition to that question being in the list, and then we send 10, 15 questions or whatever. To the different agencies, they give us our written responses and what Xavier was alluding to, he's joined me on is he's logged into the Zoom calls for the consultations that we've had. So we spend like the entire day with a bunch of agencies, it's like 10 hours, it's brutal. But whatever. So we more often than not, we get written responses, that I'll speak about in a
Like
minute.
we get.
Yeah, so like, and I share that with you guys, and I'll show you where it is. But then if we do our homework, we review them, and then when we sit down in the consultation, we aren't just talking about the answers, we're asking follow-up questions, we're asking for clarity. Why isn't the agency doing this? Why can't the agency do that? It's really important to us that the following, right? And then similarly, each community board, per the charter and OMB's advice, should be scheduling district consultations, which we've tried and I do still think they're good when we're able to pull them off.
So like.
Yeah, the challenge has been not every agency has been responsive, right? But the ones that have been responsive, they've been good conversations, right? So I know when you had youth, forget his name, from DYCD, he wouldn't necessarily do the consultation, but he would just show up at youth and just like, and it was better than the consultation, because he just gave us a ton of information. I forget his name, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like one year we had like the budget person at DOE, and she was amazing. In terms of the level of detail that she provided us, and also explained to us their process, right? Like different agencies have different ways that they receive requests, process them, they have their own priorities, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes our things don't match, or they're like, well, that's interesting, but I'm still kind of hacking away at my list. But it's worth having that conversation, a couple of other committees, agencies that have been good when we've been able to schedule them. Like we had a hiccup this year, so we didn't do any, but we'll do them again next year, next summer. Typically they have it in the summer. The Parks Department has been good. They take forever to get scheduled, but once they're in the room, the people that they send are very knowledgeable. And they just tell it to you straight, we can, we can't. That's helpful. Like we don't necessarily have to like the answers, but we appreciate the answers. The Department of Transportation has been, every time that I've had a consultation, they've been very thorough. They've been great. And that's been very helpful. HPD, a couple of times been meh, a couple of times been good, right? I'm supposed to say something else. Good. That's this funny meme, it almost slipped. And whatever, so like, EDC, SPS, some agencies are not responsive, but those conversations, they're like, we approach it the same way that we do borough consultations, where we send questions in advance, but from the perspective of the district. What investment are you doing in the district? The limitation is that the agencies are not budgeted by district, right? They're budgeted citywide. Now, they may have, for example, a capital project or that's in your district, so you can ask that question, and they can answer more specifically, like, we need a pool at PS 123, right? I forgot the name of that school, but we got that pool. Yeah, it's awesome. And how did that happen? And they're able to say, yes, we can do that. Other times we ask more kind of, can you fund the Cornerstone program? And that's citywide. So they can say, we do have 5 or 6 or 8, whatever the number is in your district.
But we didn't get that.
Yeah, or they're not gonna say, we're gonna give you $5, but we've put 100 into the whole program, things like that. But you can extract value from it. One, before I go on too long, one thing that I kind of just wanted to throw out there for this group, for us to like, know as we're going along. The statement and the budget requests, they're political documents, right? They're policy documents. So sometimes, the conversation will focus on budget requests, because that's more easily digestible, like, I need one of these, and we ask for one of those, and they're either gonna give it to you or not. Some things are more broad and kind of ongoing, so like our top 2 requests are give us more housing for special needs and give us more housing for low income. Those are never gonna budge, so long as I'm here, those are budget, because those are fundamental to the community board's design, right? So those are essentially policy positions. They're never going to say, we're spending $100. They're always gonna say, we're gonna continue to accommodate this within existing resources. So that means that means we understand, we agree, but we can't say yes. But that's essentially yes, right? So some of the requests, we're making a kind of statement of our, I can't think of a word, like kind of policy, whatever, like our morals. There's a better word, it's just not coming up. And some of them are more specific. We need this thing. We need 10 of these things, right? So it's just something to kind of think about as we go along. You don't want to be, all the time saying, we love this, we love these big things, because that you're never going to get an answer. And there's but so many spaces in terms of the requests. But it is important to strategically throw in things, right? In terms of the requests that are the kind of more statement of our values, that's the word. And then also in the statement, which we'll get to later, like that's like a more time, intensive exercise. But it's another thing where we really want to be, we really want to think about expressing what's core to the way that we think and the way that we look at our community. And I said I would stop, but I didn't. The statement is very valuable with certain audiences, right? So if we ask our council members, did you read our statement of needs? They're never gonna say yes, they don't read it. But you'll hear a presentation of youth plus from some organization that's trying to do program. They said, we read your statement and we know this is important, so we came up with this idea. Or a developer even, right? As much, heat as they catch. The sharper ones will read the statement to see like, what's this board about? And then put something in their project that speaks to what this board said, like, I like pink, and we have 5 pink apartments, right? Because, like, we're gonna keep that right up, right? We're gonna be satisfied by that. So the statement is useful, not for every audience, but for, some audiences and some audiences that, that are valuable, right? And then the requests have a different audience. Now I'll shut up.
No, that was really helpful.
Thank you for that. Yep.
And just to also the point about, working with other community boards, over the last cycle of meetings, I was involved with the, Columbia Center for Smart Streetscapes program as a representative of the community board, and all of the Harlem community boards also had representation from there. And then we spoke a lot about like, what are our concerns on the streetscape, and a lot, there's a lot of overlap, right? And, when it came to specific things about sanitation and trash and flooding and, there were conversations like, we should talk. So I think like, there are alignments there that we can, exactly, and build a case, because if one community board is saying something, maybe nobody will pay attention, but if 3 of our community boards are like, actually, no, we're not gonna do X, Y, and Z until you understand this basic need, that could be really helpful. So just to frame, I guess, the next couple steps of this conversation, and anyone online, please feel free to raise your hand and jump in at any time. I wanted to just quickly touch on the district budget consultation meetings that we're planning with the council members. As well as conversations that we've had across the committees, and I would like to start with, I called every chair of every committee to try to understand what's going on in each committee, and I know that each of us serve in a lot of different committees, so it'd be great. So hopefully we can go through that quickly. So just, on the, elected official front, we reached out to both Councilmember Ayala and Councilmember Salam. We have not yet scheduled, but we have followed up, and I think probably we need to follow up again with, Councilmember Salam's office. They said they're working on it, and we want to push them, but I think it's time to push. And then, on Councilmember Ayala's side, we were able to schedule a meeting. Originally, it was scheduled for 30 minutes, and she was kind enough to give us a full hour of discussion. It was a really great conversation. We went through all of the requests, mostly parks requests that say, you know, please refer to your city, your council member or elected official for, you know, for this item. So I think okay, so I'm done, I muted for a minute. The big one was the sanitation garage, so, that's something that, you know, I think we all read the IBO report, we heard IBO's presentation, you know, we've all seen the points of agreements, and, I don't know that a lot of us are aware of the process that happened before this with the CAG and, this sort of options for citing this sanitation garage that were explored, and, you know, the eventual dissolving of that CAG. Our ask to Councilmember Ayala was to reinstate the CAG, coming out of hearing, what Parks was presenting as a sort of storehouse building in Randall's Island, which was one of the locations, you know, tangentially that we were looking at for the sanitation garage, which was shot down for a lot of reasons, all of which we covertly asked Parks, and they, you know, told us was not an issue. So I think there's still opportunity to move forward those conversations, and Angel and I are talking about, you know, how do we make it as productive as possible. So we'll keep everyone updated on that. But otherwise, the rest of the requests were primarily parks, you know, public restroom at Thomas Jefferson Park, public restroom at Harlem Greenway Lake, Marcus Garvey Acropolis lighting, Bayground playground renovation, you know, all these outcomes from the parks tours meetings that we did. And as a note, you know, I'm not an expert, but it seems to me that almost every agency has some sort of operating budget, but Parks is the one that does not. They really operate on funds, you know, from elected officials or, you know, grants or initiatives that, like the Community Parks Initiative is how we got a Lincoln Playground and Peter Minuet Playground funded. And now, you know, they, to Angel's point about finding alignment with the city agencies, we were able to get Peter Minuet funded because Parks and us had a conversation, and we both agreed that that was probably the most important ask at that time. So it's helpful that we were, you know, able to put that up higher on the list in order to get funded in alignment with what Parks was asking for. So we talked about with Diana that potentially grant playground might be something, or she's also interested in Sunshine Playground, which is not an ask on our list, but is certainly a park that we visited and we have a lot of documentation on. We also talked about the local theater renovation, which on the list is number 17. So I think there's opportunity to partner with her or others on that. And then there was a few other things that we talked about as it related to just funding for the community board for operating within hybrid meetings, which, you know, it costs a lot of money to have videographers, and some places are asking us to provide funds for space usage and all that. So and then finally, the TIL, the HDFC is, I can't speak as eloquently on that. If you have anything you want to say about that.
About the TILs?
Yeah, or anything that I just said.
But yes to all that. but the Tillask is a good example of something that. I hope this committee can be, helpful and to the board in. Not just resolving, but resolving the way that we approach it, so. One of the gazillion acronyms stands for Tenant Intern Lease Program, long time ago, the city came into possession of a lot of properties through abandonment and, tax levy, whatever, and designed a series of different strategies for offloading those properties. Some of them selling them to third parties like, local nonprofit, housing, managers, developers and property owners. And one of them is, without going through the whole exhaustive list, one of them was the tenant intern lease program, which essentially was a way that put the tenants of a building on a path towards home ownership. HPD is the managing agency for it, without getting into all the gory detail. They didn't always do the best job with the entire portfolio. In many instances, it worked out just fine. But in some instances, it just kind of stayed. Many properties, including a few that still remain in our district, were just left in limbo. The tenants that were, really looking forward to this opportunity were kind of just kept in limbo and, strung along. So this request came here through one of our members, that advocate to the board even before they became a member, and then since has really been, consistent about, pushing the board to, push the city on it. The program has morphed into another program. The details of which are slightly different than the original one. So the remaining buildings and those tenant associations, don't agree with the new terms. That's a conversation for another day. However, while it's something that I think the board should be supportive of, like all affordable housing, we should be supportive of, low, very low, moderate, with all regulated, we should be for. And of course, opportunities for home ownership, should not be ever taken off the table. And these are unique opportunities, right? The program as designed originally would sell the apartment to the tenants for $250. It's crazy. And then the new version, it's $2,500. And there's, a bunch of details that go into it, like you have to get a mortgage for the building, blah, blah, blah. But there's something that we need, like back to that point about like a, political kind of statement that we're making with the document. We're not gonna get into the negotiation for how this building goes from a rental building to an HDFC, which is the ultimate like co-op that it should be. But, it is important to us that there be affordable opportunities, right? We need to keep it on there to keep pushing the city to do its part, and then using this document to pull the city into conversation with us and conversations with us about, okay, where are we today in 2024? What's the plan for next month and so forth? When is this thing gonna move forward? What's left? That, what hurdles remain that need to be cleared, and what things, remain to be addressed both by the city and by the tenants, because sometimes, like we advocate for tenants 99% of the time, but sometimes we have to be honest, like you did not pay your rent this year, right? So we gotta talk about that, right? But I think that this document is a good jumping off point for that conversation. The part that we have to do is we have to do our part in engaging and insisting on that conversation. We can't just put it in the statement and walk away from it and not think about it until next September. Like nothing's gonna happen, like these agencies are busy, you have to get in front of them, right? So that's something that I think this committee can help keep the body honest on. I'm like, okay, you asked for this, what are you doing about it? Like, how are you, keeping on it? Similarly, in terms of crafting requests from scratch, I really hope this committee can help the board get out of the habit of just pulling ideas out of thin air. 100,000 times out of 100, those ideas don't work. Right? And it's sad, because like, you're like, oh, I love a unicorn, there's no such thing, right? So people ask for all kinds of stuff, or it's September and Angel says, you have to put this on your agenda, and people are like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, a unicorn. And then you have a list of madness. We have to think about, and I think the way to, how I would like to encourage other committees is like, you talked about all this stuff for 10 months. You sat here, gave up 2-3 hours of your time. What did you talk about? What did you learn? That should be informing your requests. Your observations of the neighborhood should be informing them. It shouldn't just be, for example, ferry service is something that consistently comes up. And while I understand that as an aspiration, and we don't have to give it up as a no, we have to understand why the city is being resistant to do it. And sometimes, it's BS, and sometimes it just doesn't fit, right? So we have to be, persistent, but also, kind of persistent with ourselves. In terms of like, accepting when a thing doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work on 100th Street, but it might work on 105th, or whatever. And we can change our request that way, but we should be engaging the agencies like, is this feasible here? Why isn't it feasible, right? So like, the Parks Committee has had conversations through the Esplanade stuff about the potential for ferry.
Yeah.
Has an answer. But then another committee that is not knowledgeable about what the conversations were at Parks comes out and says, I want a ferry. I'm like, but they just told us no, right? So we, hopefully through this committee, we can help inform the disparate committees, like, this is we pursued this is the answer we got, you may like it, may not, you can figure out how to continue, but we can't keep asking at the same place if we already got an answer.
Sure.
Can you speak a little to the process? So this committee will, through our work, connect with other committees, prepare this document, right? Plus the statement. How is it then voted on as a package? Right, so like, to your point about these like unicorns, we're the ones who have to keep them out.
Yeah.
You're hurting them,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And not
you're the-
necessarily, we're not like gatekeepers or anything, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we're
but
the
you're like the-
responsible party.
Yeah.
The realistic aspect.
Yeah. So like the other committees, of course, are gonna be part of the conversation, otherwise that would revolt, right? So like this month at every committee, you also, so you talked about requests and ideas and whatever, and next month, I tried to super simplify it this year. Next month you'll decide, okay, we had 10, we're gonna take a couple off, we landed at 8. Hey, your budget committee, here's our 8.
We got two.
So then we're gonna, or whatever the list, right, ends up being, so then it comes to the budget committee, you're gonna have to make a call. Yeah, you're gonna have to make a call, like, more often than not, you kind of respect the wishes of the other committees, you respect them. But if something's kooky, then maybe it doesn't make the list, and someone somewhere has to make the ultimate decision. And, it should not be Angel, it should be members, right? I will always have an opinion, I'll always give an input, but like I say all the time, you could take it, leave it, whatever, that's okay. I'm fine, right? As long as I get paid, I'm good. But I think there should be somewhere where these things get vetted, or at least a final spot where, like, you know what, this one doesn't make sense. This one needs to cook it more. And then it gets pushed back, and then y'all can figure it out amongst yourself. Statement wise, Derek, we absolutely do not have enough time to do that. This time.
Yeah.
Right, so this time, what it'll be a revision, unless one of you want to volunteer to give up a couple of nights to do the whole thing from scratch. And that's fine. But we should start working, so like we have to submit the full package on Halloween. November 1st, this committee should start
Next year.
looking at next year's.
Yeah.
This is misspelled, this should be capitalized, this doesn't make any sense anymore, this is a horrible idea, right? Which has happened, because we've tried, David can attest, we've tried every which way we can come up with to attack this thing. And sometimes it's resulted in some really banana stuff that ultimately, and I'll admit, since we're recording, I've just taken it out. I'm like, no, we're not gonna say that. We're so much better than that. And we can't say that, like that's disrespectful. right? Like, there's no way, like this, it's not what this body is, right? Like, I haven't spoken to David Giordano for the last 15 years and come across with the idea that David and his colleagues hate the community. I'm like,
Right.
no, that's not them. They love the community and they're like, so I'm like, this doesn't sound like the board. And it was just like a random member came up with something kooky, and like, no. But instead, this year it'll be you all.
Right, and I think it's similar to like how we write a resolution, like, or like vote on anything in the community board generally, like. The committee does the work and like there just has to be any input provided ahead of time, which I'll get into when I spoke to every chair, just reiterating that, like, and some of them really already have it set up, like. Here's the groundwork, if you wanna make any suggestions, like, it has to be determined in the next meeting. That means if you have anything that you wanna contribute, you need to send it at least 2 days before the meeting. So that everyone has a chance to digest it and understand, so that the conversation can be fruitful and definitive in the meeting. Right. Yeah, so, go ahead.
Sorry, just one other thing. Something that Isaac with Human Services and Jennifer have started to do is take the whole year approach to their request. So they're just thinking about it and making notes as they go along. And like, I'm like, oh, I'm changing this request. So like, they're talking about it in December, maybe amongst themselves, bringing it to committee, bringing it back, scratching, editing. With the idea that once it's time to submit, I'm like, here's my list. Like, I did it. I didn't have to cram. I think that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, we tried years ago to put it on every committee's agenda, budget request conversation. And it didn't take, but
I think that's hard because of the timing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about, on November 1st, you're gonna be talking about like 18 months in advance, like,
Yeah.
I can see the challenges.
right.
And you don't know what may change,
Right.
it may
Yeah.
become a bigger priority.
It may depend on what's actually adopted in the final budget.
Yeah.
Right, will inform what you wanna go for in the next one.
Yeah.
And then we all rate them as a group.
Yeah,
No, the entire board,
but to the human services, like, when they get to this month, all they need to go do is look back at their meeting minutes from the last,
Yeah.
8 meetings and say, oh, we talked about this, let's
Mm.
formalize this into a request,
Yeah.
or maybe this one isn't a request this year, and.
Right, and it might die at the next adopted, but we don't know that until all the way June, so
Right.
we're weighing in Halloween.
Yeah.
And then, praying and whatever, lighting candles until June, that they kind of go along with us.
Well, hopefully, I'd love to just quickly walk through what I heard from the committee chairs so far, and if you all could help us fill in any information that you might have heard from the different meetings that you are a part of. So the first one, Parks with Rosa, she and the committee are putting together a Google Doc and they're reviewing, unfortunately, Parks usually has the most requests, and I know that when people told me as chair to reduce the amount of requests, I added more. So I think it's highly unlikely that it's gonna be like an extreme reduction in their asks,
But a
but.
bunch came off too. Right?
Yeah.
'Cause what they happened.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so obviously the Peter Minuet Playground and other things that have been funded, we can go ahead and take off the list. There were some that were marked as like the wrong city agency and like we're directing at parks and it's really DOE, so I think there's a conversation that we could have there about. Maybe we have a conversation with DOE and say, how do we make this acceptable on your end, but and then
the
because,
DOE is saying that's not their fault.
oh no, Parks is saying it's not their park and that it needs to.
Playground, so it's DOE.
Right.
Oh,
Everybody
sorry.
needs favorite playground?
Yeah, if it's a playground, it's DOE.
Yes, yeah. So we just need to have either direct.
Yeah, no, it came up in you,
Okay,
and it's like,
But you both did it last year.
yeah,
oh,
we
yeah,
did. And there's some confusion, again, still who
Yeah.
really,
the whole jurisdiction.
nobody's claiming it.
I'll claim it. And then, no worries, and then because, the Parks Committee had been doing the tours, this year they did the community gardens tours, and I think they're anticipating probably one addition for the community gardens, just like, what is the most important thing that was heard across all the parks? I would gather it's probably water, access to water, so that, we're not gonna put in, oh, this park needs, electricity access, or this park needs, a new leaf blower, like, that's not our job, like, I think, like, looking holistically, like, where can we make the biggest impact? Anything else on parks from any people who are in that committee?
Well,
And
This just, this document, this reference guide document that DCP put together is really good in terms of determining jurisdiction.
thank you.
Not perfect, nothing's perfect, but it's pretty good.
And then on the, I called, housing eco devon licenses and haven't heard back yet. Health, with Isaac, and Human Services, he talked about, mostly maintaining existing asks, with strengthening their arguments. They might add one more if they can, formalize it into something that makes sense. And I think they have like Angel said, a really great strategy, so I have zero concerns about that. Anything else on health? Okay, on youth and education, with Asher, he noted that they were gonna keep a lot of the existing requests, some of them were funded and needed to be removed. They said potential to work with city agencies, like we discussed about, who owns what. They might have one new request, and they're working with, as Parks has done the park tours, they wanna do some school tours so that it can bolster next year's, requests. Anything else on youth from that committee?
No, but one of the things that's been good, and just, our superintendent attends every youth administration members. And she wants to make the connection with the person that, oh God, I forget his name right now, the district person that handles the facilities before we bring school construction authority in.
Right.
So that maybe he can help direct us where something's all moving and not, like Angel said, they have their own system of priority. If they're in a building, if there's something else, they may do it, even though it's not a high priority, but they're there.
Right.
And so those things have happened. I would just add that, both youth and education and also parks have had DOE principals come and speak about their projects. And a lot of those projects have been funded, and both of those principals retired.
Yeah.
This September. I'm in one of those DOE buildings as well, and I encourage those to continue to come, DOE to come to our meetings and advocate, because it's a combined effort between CDC, us, we have members that overlap all these committees together, and it strengthens our ask.
Yeah.
When we're not just talking from one committee or one community board, but from a larger entities in the community. So those things have been good, and Jen Tagano's taking over and Ms. Rado as the new principal of
Wow.
regional schools. And we're looking forward to working with them.
I have, you asked for youth, right?
Yeah.
So there's a school up on Park and 127th, Urban Assembly, the Windowless School.
Yeah.
The Windowless School Building.
Yeah.
And, we heard, we didn't talk about it here, but we heard from neighbors about an issue that I think could inform a request. And it was neighbors complaining about a generator parked in the street. Right, which is making a lot of noise, and they, are concerned about environmental stuff and noise, right? So typical constituent stuff there. However, yeah, it is. The reason the generator's in the street is because the building doesn't have the necessary power to run AC. Right, so the kids are underserved, so like that's a massive project that has to be funded. So my understanding from the principal is that they are working on it, but it's one of these ocean liner things, right? It's just gonna take forever, so it's like one of these things for us that we need to learn what all this stuff is, and then we should be advocating push. So the temporary solution to address the constituent concern is that they've moved the generator from the street into the playground, into the area where the kids are supposed to, get together and play around, run around, whatever, change phone numbers. So like that's just taking up.
And they're actually building, I mean.
Yeah,
It seems like DOE is being responsive, but it's a process that takes time.
yeah,
And since they did meet with us, I believe it was in June or
I think so.
May,
The
one of those
neighbors
last,
thing, yeah,
the neighbors came.
Yeah.
They had valid complaints but DOE was also stuck too. You have kids in a building with no air
Yeah,
conditioning.
no.
These are no windowless buildings with central air conditioning. And that was on a roof, and whatever, to get a room, but they are, I drive past there every day. There is progress being made, they're building the structure to enclose the generator or the board, whatever it is that they
Yeah.
have to enclose.
But that's a temporary fix, right? Like, none of us want that in the playground, like, get that damn thing out of there.
Yeah.
But you gotta help the kids, like, in the interim, you gotta eat it with the thing there, but.
They
but
need
my-
a whole new unit on. the
Yeah,
roof.
yeah, and they're in the, like, they're working towards it, but like, I bring it up as an example of something that. We learned not from something that we noticed necessarily, but something that was brought to us. Through, constituent concerns. Not about the children having AC.
Right.
But about them hearing noise, but we understood that children don't have AC. So like we can,
Extrapolate.
advocate for, that being resolved, and that'll help both the school, which is the priority, but also the neighbors.
What's the school, name of the school?
I always refer to it as the urban assembly school, but there's a couple of different schools in
Yeah,
there.
Fire Academy.
Yeah, historically it was Squire Academy.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's the windowless school.
Right.
So much
For the notes, I'm trying
Oh, yeah,
Windowless school.
urban assembly is.
Okay. On 120.
127th and Park.
Between Park and Madison.
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay.
So something like that. Or, for if we were going to do a request around that. Or do we have to get knowledgeable on? Who exactly is who's responsible for doing that and paying for it, or we're not gonna get it?
Well, then that's
Is that
what we
right?
ask. So we don't ask the right people.
Yeah.
We don't get a response or get the.
So you're the principal at your school?
Assistant principal.
Okay, so let's pretend you're the principal. So I'd call you, right? I'd call you, hey, Derek, what's going on with whatever, and you know better than anybody. This is, my hands are tied, I'd love to snap my fingers, but these are my limitations, this is what I'm hearing from DOE, this is what I'm hearing from SCA. And you're either gonna tell us, there's a plan and in 6 weeks it'll be fine, or this is a 6-year, 10-year, 26-year thing, or there's no answer. And then from there, all that information you just shared is gonna, help inform how we choose to continue advocating. Then the next step, right, like to what David said before, is we need to push on DOE. Like, who's our contact at DOE? Who's our contact at SCA? Is this project in your pipeline? Where in the pipeline is it? Can we get it further in the pipeline? What other fund, do you have all the money you need? Is it a
Right.
$100 million project and it's in your pipeline, but you only have $10 million? Like, are you gonna be able to do this, or you're just gonna be, duct taping this until it's resolved, and then we figure out how to further advocate? Do we have to go to the electeds? That's in Councilmember Salam's district. Councilmember Salam, were you aware of this? We're 90 million short.
Yeah.
Right? So bring it back to a parks thing, former board member, I hope you meet her one day, she's legendary. Frances Mastroda was the chair of our parks committee, right? Yelled at every single person that was here, that's how she advocated. It was love, but she was, woof. And her thing, among the humongous list of parks though, was the fire watchtower in Morris Park. I wouldn't know what the hell that was. Nobody knew what it was, but until she just kept telling us. Well, it just, we just kept putting it on there, we kept advocating, then Councilmember Dickens, Inez Dickens, now she's up in the state. Eventually came through, the borough president came through with some of the money, Inez came through with the final, and that finally got done.
Yeah.
The Acropolis around it didn't get done.
No, there's more work to be done.
So that's another one of our asks. However, we got there. So like similarly, right, by like Francis and a whole bunch of other people making a ton of noise and getting us to make noise and getting us to be like, hey, council member, hey, borough president, this needs to happen. Like sometimes the process takes a lot of agitation, right? Advocacy, to be nicer about it. But persistence, a little bit of luck.
And so that example of like, we want DOE to do something. They don't have the money to do it, right? But someone like the borough president or a council person has the ability to drop some coins into jar, right?
Yeah.
I guess, where does that part fit in to creating this document? Or does that happen after the fact, once this has gone in?
Yeah, it's a good question, and and back to the fire watchtower and Acropolis thing. We made our statement with the ask, then we do all our advocacy, we keep pushing, and what Francis taught us is, you don't remove it until it's finished. right? So Fire Watchtower got done, we didn't take it off, we just took on that line, that's still the same ask. Until the Acropolis gets done, and then we just keep pushing electeds and so until it's complete, because what we're saying is that we need this done. Right, so like, okay, you have 90 of the 100, but you don't have the 100. So until we're at the ribbon cutting and it's finished, we keep it on there, well, you know, if we still care, and we should. So. Sure. Yeah.
Anything else on youth?
No, I think again, I wanna see us to do more advocacy
Yeah.
around these kind of issues.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, just when Bill Gladstone at PSMS 108 reached out about the soccer pitch thing with the Parks Committee, like this. I think it was surprising to me how surprised he was that anybody cared. Like, oh, you're actually gonna help with this, like, you're gonna help follow up with this, like. I think the same way that we reached out to all the community gardens, just to be like, hey, we're here, we know you're here, we can be together in partnership whenever, you know, it makes sense, like, I think it's a similar
He's been the
conversation.
principal 20 years, he's.
I know. I know, yeah, but it's, yeah. it can feel-
With youth, like, it like starts with like taking it from this paper and then pulling back all the different layers and different conversations, right? So the youth committee, when I started here, didn't have the best relationship with our local schools, right? We made it a point of rebuilding that relationship, right? And through like, so like I said a thing and then David uses charms to get people to show up and build a relationship. And like, you know, we went from, they're never gonna answer no matter how many times we call. So like, you know, David and I get hugged and kissed and all you guys get hugged and kissed from Nancy at District 4, District 5 comes.
Nancy
that-
got me picking up the books.
Exactly, exactly, she got that working. But through that, then DOE budget comes, principals come.
Yeah.
You know, we got security doors done, we get the playground done, like it's all part of the whole big stew. Towards getting it, you know.
But to Angel's point, it's a slow process, so even Jen said, yeah, they're doing it.
Yeah,
It's gonna take
oh, yeah,
years,
exactly,
right? So you're talking about even middle school kids who advocated for
that are
this,
never gonna see it.
that are never gonna see it.
Yes.
But that's good too, because we teach about what we leave behind.
That's the beauty of it, right? Like, you know, this.
And this school has a great program where they do like a newscast and, you know, that was part of their presentations but that's.
Yeah, like when they mentioned that pool a couple of years ago, I was like, that'd be nice, but I don't know about that.
But it's
Cool, what's happening, like,
And,
cool,
and, you know,
fantastic.
Dr. Christie talked on last week Tuesday about how there's gonna be programs for seniors in the community.
Yeah.
For tenants in particular places to use it as well, and again. Swimming has been a big thing that we need to teach kids, and we've had drownings in this.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because of, we do have water, and there are a lot of water.
Mhm.
We wanna make sure that we're teaching those other things as well.
Alright. Mr. Ronley's out, public safety, I talked to Michelle, she mentioned they were discussing, ideas about residential permit parking, the committee's reviewing generally, sorry, my notes are a little all over the place, oh, the one ask about the NYPD, they might remove. And then I think we had a discussion similarly to what you said about like just being out in the community and seeing things, like. I mentioned that, like, I had complained with you, Angel, about this like nasty pavement section over on 110th and Lexington. And we brought it up to DOT or, you know, all the powers that be, and they're like, oh, it looks fine to us, it is totally not fine. And, but like, you know, Michelle was also bringing up other areas where the sidewalks are not ADA and, you know, that could be grouped into like a collective ask where we're pointing out like specific locations of a consistent problem.
and some of these things, that's a good example, some of these things go in here. And some of them you could tell your electeds, and some of them you could yell at your district manager about.
Yeah.
Right, like, dude, this thing is not fixed. Cause I also have, like, you all have other conversations, I also have other conversations,
Yeah.
right, like. I'll get an announcement like, oh, the city's doing this, citywide, what do they call them, those little ped ramps.
Yeah,
Right, project, and they're all very proud of themselves. but you gotta fix the sidewalk too. What's the
Yeah.
point of having a great ped ramp and then you're just,
Fumble around.
falling around, right? So that kind of information, then when I have the other conversation, I'm like, wait a second, yeah, 1/10 and less, right?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're doing that, but you need to include the sidewalk repair as well. And if it's on the property owner, then let's talk to them. And if it's a sidewalk, if it's a city part,
Yeah.
then you guys gotta do it. Our, late great Joe Goldblum, who's like one of our, board members emeritus, like a god. He was very on it with the ped ramps, man, and he's older and he's hard, difficult, with mobility. And so he's like a 60-year public servant, like he knew everybody and their parents. And he would tell us, Angel, he'd tell me, Angel, on this corner and that corner, there's this, there's this. And like, I wouldn't notice, cause so far I'm a bully body, so I'm not noticing. He is noticing, so he's telling me the list. I'm like giving the list to DOT or DDC if they're doing the ped ramp projects, which go a little further than just the corner, right? So like they could make the fix.
Anything else on public safety?
So they took off the accessibility
I
one,
think
right?
they're, I
'Cause
think
they're
they're
doing that,
going
and then
to.
the other one is the community thing versus, so. Yeah,
Dawn Sanders?
Hi there. So I'm the vice chair for public safety this year. And so I just wanted to say, this is a very important process, and we do have kind of that same issue of items that are on there year after year that get ignored, and should we take them off? Should we leave them on? And I do think we should take a page out of Francis Mastroda's book and continuing to advocate for items that year after year just get neglected. And then also, I would love to understand a little bit more about where we stand when the agency says we're already doing it, or we're going to be doing this with existing funding, like then how do we police that, so I'm just, those are my extra 2 cents, but Michelle, I'm sure updated you, but yeah.
that's a good point,
Yeah.
and that's,
Thank you, Dawn.
like. That speaks to the advocacy of the other 11 months of the year as well, right? So there's this document, yes, valuable, but then there's also the other conversations, like including, like we mentioned earlier, the district consultation. If, for example, PD, right? If there's an ask of, PD that they're saying, we're gonna do it within existing resources. That's the bad agency, but whatever. It's other agencies that say that. Then we would try to, set up a consultation with them and ask them directly, look, we asked you for this one thing, and the response in this document was, we're gonna do it with an existing, but that thing is still needing to be done. It's been a year, we've been asking for 8 years,
Yeah.
and you've given us the same answer, it still needs to be, and they're sitting right across the table, like, they have to give us an answer, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's my, like, encouragement for full district consultation.
yeah, and I think Dawn, to your point, you're the vice chair of that committee, and I think we would be looking to the leaders on each committee to be there when we have those district consultations, because I can't speak to public safety, I don't serve on that committee, so, having the people in the room who are there every month and know what the requests are and can speak to it with, compassion and conviction is helpful when we're face to face with those groups on a consultation meeting.
And expertise like Dawn Sanders.
Yeah.
Who was an elected, right, worked for an elected in a key position, right, like. She shows up, she knows what she's talking about, right, like they're not gonna be able to get away with nonsense.
So, what was interesting during COVID, when we had those consultations, we got more people on. When they would come to the office. Is there maybe a way we could go back to?
Well, yeah, no, we could, like, I meant figuratively across the table, yeah, everything's Zoom now,
Okay.
yeah, nobody will come and I don't wanna go. I think it's pretty universal, none of us wanna see each other.
Okay.
Penultimate, is the land use, committee. Jason, I sit on that committee and some of us also do. I think there were a couple of staff recommendations which we felt really good about. I think Jason just mentioned, like, if there's you know, there's new members on the committee and there's potential for like, you know, new additions based on, you know, what that collaboration might look like. And keeping existing requests as, they are quite important. Anything else on land use?
Yeah, as vice chair, nothing to add. Yeah, I guess again, expanding affordable housing, but I think that's item 4, so yeah, everything seems the same.
Great. And then lastly, I talked with Xavier on, obviously, the executive committee, they don't make specific requests, but just from his advocacy and what he heard out in the community, over the last year or so, was that, he mentioned the night shift boards, I think that's a really great idea. And the big thing that he heard was that seniors are not being, they're not, feel like they're not being heard or provided for, so I think that's a larger conversation in executive about like, where does senior advocacy fall within our network of board meetings? And maybe there's an opportunity for youth to be like an intergenerational committee where it touches on like issues of senior stuff, or you know, however we fit that in,
Yeah, I
but.
think there's definitely an opportunity there in terms of, like he mentioned, outreach and stuff, like it's human services, right, like that's under that umbrella, mostly. For the committee to, like, and we have a really key person on that committee, which is Robin Strachan, like she's like the oracle for you, you know. Or like the point for senior stuff, so like right through that and then just launch out, but to get out to them, to like Xavier's point from before, he also mentioned. Something about an elevator at one of the senior centers as a very specific project, so we should do a little follow-up on
Which
that
one?
and see, I'm not sure, he just mentioned the general, but can I ask him, is it this place? Like, see where that one lands, but like, that's, you know, I think the benefit of going out to the places.
Yeah.
But like, we need member buy-in, you know, it's tough, because like they're, I work all day for the most part, but not all of them. And then there's like, you know, some of these bodies have later meetings, so maybe we can, like NYCHA has evening TAs. The senior centers might be done by earlier, but then maybe like you just see which members have availability during the day, or maybe you just gotta send staff out there, you know, like whatever, like we're 53 people.
All right, I know it's getting a little late, I think the next thing. We just, you know, there's all these requests, I don't think we need to go through every single one, you have it printed out here. I think it would be great if over, you know, the course of the next week or so, you just take a look at everything that has been requested. And with this information that we have now, you know, like. What we might. Like bring to the table for our next meeting, I do think,
And the committees will have to have their final
yeah.
by the next time we.
Yeah, so
right?
I think like, if, also as committee members of this committee, if we could help advocate across the committee, is that like, you know, this really, it needs to be done in October, so we have literally 1 month for all the people in all the various committees to weigh in, to make their decisions, for it to come to us, and then for us to move that forward, so. I would just request that, you know, you try to help push people and across these various committees and advocate that they get, you know, any input in advance, is that the worst thing that can happen, which has happened before, is that we get to full board when we're supposed to be voting on the priorities, the wording, the statement, and there's like 50 people raising their hands about new ideas of things that have never been discussed, like changes of wording to things like that. I think hopefully we will address within our committee, like the specificity of wording and all of that, but like. I hopefully made it clear in the email I sent to the full board that, you know, if you wanna weigh in, you need to go to those committees to weigh in there so that it can come to us in the order that it needs to happen, so, I guess. Any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, agreed 1000%, like whatever it is, be it request or suggested language for the statement part, it should be agreed to by the committee and ideally voted on, so I think it's on record that they, you know, agreed that this is what they're gonna be submitting to DMV, to you guys. I just suggest you guys look at that statement document and the tracker, the worksheet for the requests, old term. Just to familiarize yourself, right, because it's 25-ish capital and 40 expense or vice versa. there's a lot of stuff to look at. If you're not in those committees, you might not be as familiar, just, take some looks at it, to get yourself familiar. So when the list comes to you next month, it's not the first time you're seeing it. I did want to, if I could, ask if the committee members have been in the committee's folder. And you know what resources you have available to you there.
Do we mind just pulling it up and looking at
Not
it?
at all.
Because like I love folders and documents and Google Drive, and I sometimes still find it very difficult to find what I'm looking for in these folders.
That's
Which is nobody's fault.
It's not,
No, I wish I could move all this stuff around myself.
yeah,
Well, I made there's a unnamed Excel spreadsheet, I think, in like the main folder, and I think I created that on accident and I couldn't delete it, so that's on
you
me.
should be able to. Sorry, Don, I'll be within a second. I'm gonna share it. I just gotta get the screen in the right place in front of me. Sure, so you can see.
So we don't call it tracker anymore?
No, God, no. I have trauma from the stretch. I'll tell you when the meeting's over. All right, Dawn, so you're seeing the screen.
That's what you got is.
Yeah, dude, it's all your
I
guys' fault.
see the screen. What did I do? I see the screen?
Nothing, just see, like, can you see the shared screen? It's like white with like 3 folders on it.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. I don't want to leave you behind. So, okay, so if you go in to your Google, whatever, you go to your shared drives, you have access to something called the CB11 Board Members Team Drive. So when I'm talking about the drive, that's what I'm talking about. The other one is from me.
Can you delete my untitled spreadsheet?
No, I'll get to it. So, okay, so the board member drive is organized by the committees. Right, there's a couple of like stragglers, but you can ignore those. So there's a general board member resources stuff, like stuff I talked about in your orientation, I just dump it in there. Or if it's on the website. But the majority of stuff is your committees, right? So DNB, ECHO. So this committee manages this process. So anything that I have that you guys need budget related, I'm putting there. So you go to district needs and budget committee, here's all your stuff, organized by fiscal year. We're currently working towards the fiscal year 26. So everything's in here. So I organized it by steps. So the first thing we're gonna do is a statement of needs and budget requests. That's now through Halloween.
Yeah.
Right? Then in January, we're gonna get the preliminary budget, and the mayor's gonna send a whole bunch of documents. I'm gonna dump them there.
Great.
Right? And then executive budget in April, adopted budget at the end of the year. So the work plan is this little thingy with the colors. They just sit on the schedule, right? So, okay, so right now we're step 1.
Yeah.
Right? So we referred to earlier to the borough budget consultations and those questions that the DM submitted and the responses we got. So I am dumping everything, all the written responses we get from the agencies in there. So borough budget consultations by agencies, all their stuff is in there, right? So NYPD, the list of questions and any other supporting documents, if you want to take a look at it, to review, you have it available to you. Now, I'm talking to the budget committee, but all members have access to the entire team drive, so every committee can look at these folders. Then process-wise, so all this junk that I printed out plus the other stuff, like reference guide stuff, is here in this resources stuff folder. It's just there, everything that, so the Department of City Planning and the Office of Management and Budget together manage this process. City planning puts together all kinds of helpful guides and documents and stuff. They're great because it can be confusing. Like there's some of this stuff is relevant to you guys and some of it is how I enter it into the portal, which is dizzying, but it's there, right? It's like having an encyclopedia. You don't have to read the whole thing, but it's just go to the right letter and you know. I'm talking to a teacher at Harvard, I'm explaining something. But whatever, so, okay, so this is the register, right, that you have in front of you, so if everybody needs to look at it digitally, it's there.
That has the requests and the responses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so exercise wise, what we need to do is just these 2 documents. The reason I put it like this is I want to keep it nice and clean, so you don't get confused as to where to find it. So the worksheet is the budget requests and the statement is the narrative part, right? So all this jazz. Right, this thing broke and give you something, I think this is important stuff, right? And then the budget requests worksheet. Which are. So the way we started, after the adopted budget in June, we populate all this with last year's request and then we work that way. Right, so last year's code, what the requests were, the reason, the corresponding agency and committees. And the adopted budget response, so, and so far as the city, the last thing we have right now, the most current thing is June 30th. That's the adopted budget. Then Angel and staff, we put our 2 cents in. These are suggestions. Hey, keep it, revise it, take it off, do whatever the hell you want,
We
right? And then if I have comments, I'll, or we have comments, we'll point you to like, oh, you might want to read this, or this is why I'm saying take it off. And then from there on, it's you guys. You all decide this is, you're determining whether you're revising it or you're keeping it or whatever. Once this part is done, then I take from there in those yellow columns to create your draft documents that you vote on. So insofar as you guys, like everything this way is just what you're reading and this is what you're doing is over here. Right? And your final ranking and. Oh, the approved ranking. So then after all the committees are done, like all the yellow stuff. And then the board finally votes, then I'll document there just for posterity's sake. So that's it, that's the worksheet. And then in here, like, so if, for example, the committee decided to revise this request, it needs to, in this box, insert the revised language. If the original request was, we want 1, 2, 3, and the new request is, we want 1, 2, 3, 4, please put the whole language in there. Because I'm just gonna copy it and drop it. So I don't get accused of you reworded it, and I'm not gonna do it. Okay? And that's it.
Well, you just deleted.
And just.
I would love to delete it.
For the process that we're doing this year where, the committees are weighing in and then we're sort of like the stopgap.
Yeah.
But should we be, like, the 2 columns there, committee notes revisions, if any, and committee approved requests with revisions, are we like reading the committee's notes in this first yellow and then we are finalizing them in the second yellow?
Yeah, so like if you're, let's say, so like the original ask was 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
They revised it to 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And you guys determine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
That has to live somewhere.
Okay, great.
So one sheet is for capital, just look at the bottom.
Yep.
The other one is expense. And then what I'm gonna do is, like I said, I'm not taking copy. When you all are done, I'm gonna drop it into this and to create the printouts that you guys vote on. That's great. So like you pull list of prioritized requests for DNB review. And then you'll make your final determination. So like, actually, the answer to your question is the last sheet.
The last sheet.
This third one, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all the committee's input, I drop in there, and then you guys determine. On this sheet.
Like if we wanted to, like you said, like someone, the committee made a crazy ask and we're like,
Changing it.
just adjusting it slightly.
Yeah.
That happens on this block.
Yeah, it's stay there.
So you'll streamline it for us essentially by putting it there.
Sorry?
You're just streamlining everything for us by putting it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, because it's locked, will our committee have like access to this?
That's such a question.
I will make sure that you have,
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions or comments about all that?
or just a.
Or just, yeah, that's fine too. I'm happy to do
Yeah, we trust you.
Regarding the priority ranking.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
what input is the committee's making? And then what we do in this group?
Yeah, so
So that's what you put on your, I'm sorry.
No,
You're gonna,
I try not to put all the pressure on you.
no, please.
But you can correct me. I'd like to see if I could answer it and then maybe you wanna
Go
correct me.
for it,
All right.
go for it.
So the committees will only be ranking their specific requests.
Okay.
And then we have to take all of their requests and rank it comprehensively for the board.
And like what we've done in the past is we kind of start from last year's list. So
Well,
like if something was like 55 and the committee's saying, put this first. This committee is gonna have to determine where it goes on that list, so, and you know, and catch the arrows.
So let's say it's like, we're up to the fourth slot and we're gonna put a housing request, we don't have to put their first request,
Right,
No,
we have.
yeah, so like their priority list tells you this is super important to them, so that their first. If you put it 55th, David's gonna attack you. But if it's in the, you know, it's, you know, somewhere toward the top.
right, and then to the point where, you know, we might all disagree, we are 100% gonna disagree, like, I remember, you know, all the parks requests to me last year were obviously the most important request. Right,
Yeah.
so our mission is that, you know, between us, you know, we're on October 16th. And then executives on October 24th, and then the full board's on October 29th. So we basically have to put it out there for everybody else so that everyone can see and then weigh in if they, you know, if we need to have any more adjustments from what we determine as a committee, that can happen in executive, and then it can be finalized at full board.
Yeah, and the committee's recommendations on these sheets are gonna be 3 categories. High, which is, you know, just to give them a sense, 1 to 10, medium and low. And then like, so that'll give you all a sense for when you do your sheet, it'll be the same thing. You know, medium, high, low, and then just start adding some numbers up. So then so there's the committee, there's this committee, there's executive in terms of blame. And then eventually you get to blame me. Cause if you guys really mess it up, then I'm like, all right, just 2. And then if, you know, you kind of need somebody, a scapegoat, just yell at me.
And in terms of how like the sausage,
I'll make a call.
yeah, in terms of the sausage actually gets made,
Yeah,
like, is it possible that something doesn't get done because we ranked it at the bottom of the list?
no. No, it's a matter of,
It's back to about.
like
balance,
matching,
policy.
yeah, matching with their priorities, their funding, all that kind of jazz.
So like, if it really doesn't matter if something was number 30 or number 20,
No, so like,
More to us in terms of.
but to us it matters,
Yeah.
but that not.
yeah, it's not gonna be ignored, but like if. Cause once we submit it to DCP and OMB, they're gonna dole them out to the agencies. Right, so if we have 1 request for the mayor's office of criminal justice, which we did. And let's say it's 30 something. That's the only thing going to them. If we have 2 PDs, all they're getting is the 2 PDs. So they're not getting a list of 100 to like find theirs, they're just gonna get their 2, or their 10, you know, parks, like, they're 50.
And the parks request last year that was funded was request priority 13, and there were at least 5 in front of
Yeah.
that, so. Okay, anything, so I know Xavier mentioned the need survey, I know we're keeping that open until full board, right, Angel?
That's right.
Do we have any findings to go through right now?
Trying to log myself out. I have to find it in my email, so yes,
Yeah.
but I don't wanna show the whole world my email.
Oh, no
But
worries.
I'll find it and then I'll put it up for you, so like, talk amongst yourself for 10
Okay.
seconds and I'll find it.
And then the only other things, you know, if. I know I just said that hopefully budget requests come from the committees, but, I don't, it's on here that recommendations for budget requests, I vote that we don't. Come up with new requests if we don't have to, and we again go to the committees and advocate for those within the committees, but is there anything that you all have thought about or would like to bring up right now?
You know, I think Angel brought up that whole thing with the choir academy. I think that should be something we look at, and maybe consider as a new budget, and it's,
Yeah,
you know, that we did. Kind of like end of the year, is, you know.
yeah,
And trying to find out more information, but it seems to be moving. So we'll look at that.
Okay.
But that will be done with the committee.
okay, perfect. And then we already talked about our, October meeting deliverables, which, you know, I guess ideally we're running through these, just so we have a baseline understanding. The budget process request documents is good for notice, and then, oh, are you ready?
That's certainly.
Yes, sir.
And how many responses do we have?
Today, we have 76.
Okay, great.
So in terms of responses, I have something to say on that.
Yeah.
So our process this year didn't go off the way it was supposed to. Right, so that speaks to the low number. We've gotten up to like close to 300.
Yeah.
And that was a result of committed and determined outreach. So we were tabling all the time, we were pushing it in the newsletter, we were having it available in the office. The most effective thing is the tabling. So fill out the form, I'll give you a t-shirt. That's why we have the t-shirt, right? It's simple as this. Right, tabling is a challenge, that's why you don't do it alone, because if you are alone and you have a stack of t-shirts, you're gonna get jumped for the t-shirts, right? Especially the senior events. They're lovely, but they're aggressive. They're no joke, they don't give it up, right? Yeah, they don't care. So if we have multiple people and they're really pushing it, then that gets the numbers up. And what we used to create the survey ourselves based on the questions from DCP's form. DCP made this even easier for us. It's their form, like they created their portal, so we just share the link. That's what that QR code in the newsletter is all about. And they're documenting all, they're compiling everything in this little handy little thing for us. So we have between now and full board a couple more big opportunities for community engagement. So, we'll push them in the newsletter. The staff will be at a couple of these. It really helps if the members come up. Right, like, so if we're, for example, at the our full board's 24th, I forgot when
Yeah.
back to school is. It might be after
No, it's the 21st.
the 21st, right? So that's a perfect one. Tons of parents. So if I have 5 or 6 members, 10 members that could come out for an hour, half an hour, and kind of like just, finesse or use the charisma with the community members, they'll fill it out. And it's quick, it's just check, fill something out. And it helps get that number up. The last thing on community engagement, people appreciate when the staff goes, they really like it when you guys go. Cause I live in Westchester, they don't see me. They see you at the supermarket, they're like, hey, Derek. And they get happy, and then David handles the, after school for my kid. They love that, like, that's the experience, like, I get like ignored, which is fine by me. Cause what I want is for them to do it, I've seen it time and again, right, like, if David is at a thing. People are coming up, and we've done this at the school thing, right, like, when you go to a school event with David, there's a lot of people coming up to him. Which is great, cause he's been doing this forever. Right, but like, if Xavier shows up, or Jess shows up, or like Judith, like, knows everybody on 120th area, like Marcus Garvey area. Everybody knows her, so she's there, they all like kind of flock, so that's like an encouragement to come out to the back to school. Plus, it's super nice, the parents are really motivated, and we need a little security. Cause the parents are no joke, if you got bottles or backpacks, it's a problem, like, they become aggressive, which is great, but you want them to fill out the survey first.
Great.
And that can get the number up.
So who's gonna be there Saturday?
I'll be there. I always go unless I'm sick to the back to school. And Khalid really likes doing the community engagement. And I think Marlene's gonna come with us too. Marlene's gonna party on Park. There's one other thing, but I can't remember, but it's in the newsletter.
Well, and I know like this survey is gonna close at the end of,
Full board.
Full board
Yeah.
this month, so I think like that, obviously.
If you want me to hold it open, to the last day in September, it's whatever you say, like you
Yeah.
said that day, so I said that day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, obviously, like, we need to get out there more, and I think what might be helpful is like, maybe at our November meeting, we review all of like the standard tabling events across, the year, so that we can say, all right, well, we'll sign up for this one and start doing survey stuff like way in advance, or, like, start to do this super early so that it's not, maybe we can get 500 responses instead of
Yeah.
76.
Yeah, like there's some of the events that, there's always events happening, so I'm never gonna discourage you from doing any of them. And so long as I have t-shirts, you can have them to give out, or whatever merch we have that particular year. But there's some that are like really big. So like, I wouldn't say. I'm not gonna suggest a block party or a festival, cause that's crazy. But like events, like the back to school is a really good one. The National Night Out's a really good one. The, Diana, Melissa's youth thing is a really good one. The Power of Aging Well, which is seniors focus, is really good. And if the weather's good, they're out there dancing, it's lovely. And you know, there's other, you know, Party on Park, I said that already? That one's really good, Carrie does a great job of the Party on Park. Once the Placita gets rebuilt in whatever number of years, and they start having events there, then we could just live there.
Yeah.
Carlos Diaz
Yeah,
does the 106th Street thing with music and he's always, you know, asking us to do a table. And there's, if it's a salsa event in East Harlem, it's gonna be a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
That's an easy thing to do it. They might not wanna fill out the form, they wanna dance, but there's people there, you could give it a shot.
I'm sure.
Well, I think we could,
They go fast.
I'd love to hear from everybody, you know, I'm happy to keep the survey open. The idea of closing it at school board was just so that the responses could be summarized and useful for the committees to review and finalize in their October meetings, so maybe it would be good to keep it open, you know, until I don't know, the Sunday before the first meeting or something, just so that People have some time after full board. Yeah,
People in the public, though.
gonna help get the word out a little bit more. So let me look at the calendar. We have, so full board is on the 24th. Maybe in the first community board meeting is in October on probably the, or I guess that would be the second. Yeah, so maybe we close it on the 30th, like just at the end of the month. Because the findings are already summarized by DCP, so we don't
Yeah.
need to do anything on the community board side, right?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
so like here we have, it's just quickly, the biggest is, and this will help for the top three for the narrative. So, crime and public safety, affordable housing, of course. Quality of life issues and trash removal and cleanliness, and then to make it a square five, homelessness. That economic recovery support.
Okay, great.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find a place to make this a little bit more accessible. Yeah, put in the email, so it's just without the website, people can follow.
Well, I think also, you know, when we have full board, we can just put the QR code on the screen and then, yeah, I think that's, yeah.
That's good.
Okay. So we already talked about October, I guess just, you know, I can't reiterate enough that we have like 1 month to do all of this and, you know, I have to put it out there that unfortunately I have a construction documents deadline on the 18th of November, which is excellent for me. But I'm happy. I know, Angel, we don't want to keep these meetings. Obviously, this meeting went a lot longer. I think it was a great conversation and it was excellent use of time. But, you know, let's be in conversation over the course of the next couple weeks. Let's keep conversation moving via email or, you know, however works best for us. You know, maybe we could have a quick call. We're not that many people on this committee, maybe a week ahead of the October meeting, just to make sure we're not running in and like gonna have a lot of problems or something. But ideally, you know, we hash it out and, you know, we might be here a little late in October, but we'll get it done.
Yeah, so you meet the 16th.
Yeah.
And then you have a week before exec.
Yeah.
So you have from now to then, and then a week after your October meeting, and then like then the full board's not till the 29th.
Yeah.
You got, you know, a little bit of room to like kind of get it. Yeah, it got bumped, I forgot what on the 22nd.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, us doing the work plus the time for people to digest and respond.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like a little bit of working backwards there, so.
Yeah.
Any final questions or comments? It looks like we lost Sage, so I can follow up with Sage, Stephanie and Judith via phone. And is email the best way to contact with y'all?
Yeah, that was.
Okay, and if we were gonna set up a call, it's like, I mean, we can just like do a doodle poll or something and take some time. Maybe keep it to like 30 minutes and hopefully it's productive. Okay. Anything else, Angel?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna do it.
With that, the meeting adjourned.
Oh, I forgot about this thing. Give me a second.
Right.
Something. Any old business? No. Any new business? No. Do we need to do roll call?
Yes.
Okay.
Stephanie Arroyo, Kenneth Crouch, Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Judith was excused, David Giordano,
President.
Dave Mason not early, Don Sanders, Derek Stampone.
Present.
We have one.
If there are no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:18.
All righty.
Thank you.